Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, it's part 8 of the new excavator build. Well, it's a little chilly here in the shop this morning, but that is the downfalls of a Canadian winter. Guys, we have made a lot of progress on this, and we are going to get started this week with some more parts on sheet 5, and it all starts off with some 1/4-inch diameter dowel. Now the 1/4-inch dowel that I'm referring to is to construct this exhaust pipe, which will go on our deck cover top that we made in last week's show. It uses 1/4-inch dowels. I've measured off these angles. It's 45 at this one section. At the other end of it, it's a 30-degree angle. And on this 1-inch long section, it's a 15-degree angle. But they show it as a solid dowel. Now, I would like to kick it up a notch by hollowing out at least this top section so that it looks a little more like an exhaust pipe. So let's head over to the drill press and I'll show you what to do with that. So the very first thing that I've done is I have taken a longer piece of 1/4-inch diameter dowel and cut the end of it to 30 degrees to match this angle here on the plans. Then using my miter box, I cut it to a shorter length. After that, you want to mark your center very carefully, and I've taken a scrap of 3/4-inch oak and drilled a 1/4-inch diameter hole through it, and then over at the scroll saw, you can use a bandsaw or a hand saw, you can use whatever you want, but I've cut a kerf. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to place this right in there, just like that, and then use a clamp and clamp that kerf back together, and that will effectively clamp and hold that little piece of short dowel in place in our block. Now I've got a 5/32 diameter brad point bit here, and I'm going to drill straight down through this dowel, not all the way through though, probably about 3/4 of the way through it. And you should end up with something that looks like this. Now, we're not done here, so let's head over to the bench and I'll show you where we go with this next. Now using our miter box, what we're going to do is I've placed a mark on there for where we want it for the maximum length. We want to try to make sure that this 30-degree cut is straight up and down. You don't want it all off kilter because it'll end up gluing together strangely. So get it as lined up as you can. Eyeballing it is just fine. And then using a fine saw, we're just going to gently cut this off. You want to be careful because those thin walls of the dowel can be fragile. Just like that. There we go. And there is the end of our pipe. So the next thing that we want to do now that we have that piece done is take a longer piece of dowel over to the table saw and cut the end off at our 15 degrees. And then back here at the miter box, we can cut that to its final length of 1 inch. Now the reason that we don't glue or don't drill this hole here all the way through is because we need the surface to glue these two dowels now end to end. So let's glue these together and then set them aside to dry. And once it dries, you can just very carefully sand the corners to give it a more rounded Okay, this is what happens when you don't let it dry all the way and you push things for the camera. So let it dry all the way, guys. Don't do what I just did. And then you can sand it all the way around to give it the profile that you want. Live and learn. I'm moving on. And once it finally dries and you get this sanding and the shaping done, you can glue it in place and you'll end up with something that looks like that. Now, it's time now to move on, and what we're going to concentrate on now is the cab of our excavator. And what we need is we're going to need some 1/4-inch thick material. So I have cut some 1/4-inch thick poplar to be the dimensions that we need for our pieces, our two sides, our bottom, our top, and our back. I've cut a little extra for the back because we're going to do something a little different with that afterwards. But these three pieces here for the floor, the top, and the back, these are all 1 11/16 inch wide. I would suggest cutting them all at the same time. Don't cut them separately. That way they are all uniform, and even if you're a little off, they're all a little off, so it'll still fit properly. So the first thing that we're going to concentrate on will be this piece right here, which is the cab roof. It's a very simple piece. It does call for a chamfered edge, a taper here, but we're not going to do that just yet. What we are going to do is cut the cab roof whole. And for that, I'm just going to mark it out and cut it at the scroll saw. It's no big deal. And you end up with something that looks like that. So as long as you follow the dimensions on the plan, your floor piece and now your roof, for all intents and purpose, are finished. We can put those aside and concentrate on the left and the right side. And for that, I've photocopied the patterns of the left and the right side. And we need to make a template because there is some routing to do, not so much on the right side. So for the right side, we can cut this out and using spray adhesive, we can adhere it to our piece and cut out our window. I wouldn't cut the perimeter just yet, and you'll understand why in just a bit. But for the left side, we're actually going to attach this to a piece of 1/4-inch hardboard because we need to make another routing template. So the first thing that we're going to route on our cab left side will be this detail right here. Here's the thing. You have to remember that you have to enlarge everything by the diameter of your router bushing. So in this case here, my bushing is 5/16 of an inch in diameter. So I have to extend each side out by 5/32 in order to get an overall dimension that is 5/16 of an inch bigger. And that will center it where I need it. So we can see my pencil lines right here, and I'm just going to take this over, and the first thing we're going to do is cut this out of the scroll saw to give us the template to route this piece. On the back, this bottom line here of our pattern, as well as the edge line here, I have transferred that onto the back so that I know exactly where to double side tape this piece down in order to get the routing done. So what I'm going to do, I don't think we needed a video of how to route this. I've showed you this before. I'm going to get this cut, get that detail routed, and then we're going to move on to the next part of the routing. And once you get that routed, we can see our next routing line will be the perimeter of our door. So exact same process. We are going to extend this by 5/32 of an inch all the way around to give us a total of 5/16 larger. And then same process. We will adhere this to our template and then route that detail. Again, I don't think we need a video of the process. You've seen it here on this build before, and I'm just going to get it done and show you what we end up with. And there we have the perimeter of our door routed. So the next thing that you can do is you can take this cutout that you made for that routing, and we're going to cut out these windows as well as this window here that was left behind, and those will become marking templates. So it's just a matter of cutting this at the scroll saw, marking them out onto our doors and our cab side, and then cutting them out. If you don't want to do that, you can very easily make another photocopy of the pattern and just carefully lay it down onto your stock and cut out your windows. And at this point we can cut our perimeter, but we want them both to be identical. So we will sandwich them together, making sure that our outsides are on the outside. You don't want to do this and have them completely wrong, but align them so that the outsides are on the outside, and then we will use some masking tape, tape these two pieces together, and then using the pattern that we have on our cab right side here, we will increase our blade size on our scroll saw and cut the perimeter here. Now, one thing that I did notice is that the plans called for this to be 4 inches high, but yet when you measure off the pattern on the actual print, it's 3 15/16. So it's actually a 1/16 of an inch shorter. So I've adjusted that as well, just so that I coincide with the plan. So either way, we're going to get these taped together. We're going to stack cut them, and then I'll show you what I have at that point. Okay, so now these pieces are pretty much done. The only thing that I've changed here is on this edge. I've measured the angle, which is shown right here. I've measured this at 9 degrees, and all I've done over at the table saw using my miter fence is I have cut this to a 9-degree angle. That way it will line up with our back panel. But now what I want to do is I want to work on this cab rear. So on this side, I don't know if you can see this line right there, but that line was drawn by me. And it is just 90 degrees to this top section here. So I then measured this angle, and go figure, it's 9 degrees. So for this bottom piece, all I've done is I've marked it where I want it to cut, and I have cut this using the miter fence at 9 degrees. I have then taken this piece, which is much longer than we need, and I have cut it at 90 degrees at the end. And when they go together, you end up with this sort of a thing. You see how that's got that curve or that bend to it now, and that bend will coincide with this bend. So at this point, what I really want to do is I want to do a dry fit of this assembly with this section in place as well. And with the dry fit, everything is looking good. It's fitting together very well. Part of that reason is because we cut all of these middle pieces at the same time, so they're all identical. At this point now, we can see how well this fits. I'm happy with that. But what I want to do is we now need to mark this to be able to trim it. So all I'm going to do is using a pencil, I'm just going to mark this at the top, just across the top line of our roof. And we will cut that at the table saw. I'm actually going to cut it just a little proud, maybe a 1/16 of an inch more than what I need there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to mark out this rear cab window. And once we get that done, we can cut that over at the scroll saw, and then I'll show you what we want to do next. So what I've done is I've cut this cab front here, which is nothing more than a simple piece with a 9-degree angle cut at the one end. And as well, I want to look at this here, this cab top front. This is a ridiculously crazy piece. And no matter how I look at it, I really can't think of a good way to safely, and that's the important part here, to safely make it. So it doesn't really matter. What I've done is I've cut a block of wood here that is 5/16 of an inch thick. It is our 1 11/16 of an inch long, and it is 5/8 of an inch wide. And that will get glued in place here, just like this in the front, and then we will shape it once everything is dry. So we can see here that the back of our cab does stick up above the rest of it. It doesn't matter. We're going to shape that in just a bit. And we have our window cut. It's now time to glue all this together. So just glue it together. Be very careful to make sure that you don't leave any gaps and that everything is held in place. And once it fully dries, we can move on from there. And once your glue is dry, you end up with something that looks like this. Now, it looks a bit rough because these pieces are protruding up over the front and the back of our cab. Not to worry. We are going to take this over to the belt sander now and form them right up to the edge of our sides here so that it has a nice smooth transition. We'll do the same thing here on the front, and then on the back section here, both for this upright and this angled window section, as well as the bottom, we are going to use our sandpaper attached to the MDF just to give it a good sanding and level anything out that may have gone, a little funky. So at this point, our cab looks something like this. I think it's looking great. We're coming along. There's still a few more things to do here, and one of the things is to add the cab roof trim. Now these are just 1/16 of an inch thick material that is 1/4 inch wide and 1 1/4 inches long. It's just a miter box cut, and we are going to glue the 3 of those in place on the roof. Now I will caution you here, when it comes to details like this, use squares and whatever you can to get them perfect, because I promise you, these small little details, any little imperfection in them and it sticks out like a sore thumb. You have no idea how much it really sticks out. So you really want to be careful to get them absolutely perfect, and squares and other instruments like that will help you to do that. The next thing we want to do to this cab is, in the drawing, it shows all the way around a 3/8 radius. I would never suggest putting this or putting a roundover bit to this. It's too fragile. This thing will just blow apart. So that is hand sanding, guys. Sit down, put some music on, enjoy yourself, and put a round over. Now, don't be too concerned about whether or not it's 3/8 of an inch radius. Just put a nice round over there to give it a softer profile on these corner edges. And there we have that radius all the way around. Now, I think I said it was a 3/8 radius. I was looking at the wrong section there. A 3/8 would be huge on this. In fact, it would absolutely destroy the front edge here. So it's actually a 1/8 radius. Sorry about that. But we're just going to do a little bit of a dry fit to see how we're looking. And check that out. Doesn't that look absolutely spectacular? It really does. That looks great. So let's carry on. There's a lot more to do with this cab. So our next piece is this small little piece here for our cab. It's called the cab rear block. Very simple piece. We'll just follow the dimensions and you'll cut a rabbet out of a longer piece of stock and then cut off the length that you need, which in this case is 1 5/8. And then we can just glue this centered into the back of our cab. Really nothing special about it, but we can get that glued in and then we can move on. We're going to start working on the details of the inside of our cab. Well, the first detail that we're going to work on for the inside of this cab will be the seat, and we will start that with the seat side panels. Now for that, I have 2 pieces of 3/16 inch thick material that I have taped together with masking tape. I'm just going to attach the pattern using spray adhesive, and then we will stack cut them over at the scroll saw to make sure that they are both identical. And when you get those done, you should end up with 2 pieces that look like this. And with that masking tape on there, very easy just to peel the pattern off. And we can give these a light sanding now. and put them aside. We'll get back to these in just a little bit. The next piece that we will construct will be the seat base, and I have taken a piece of walnut and I have cut it to the dimensions on the plans. Now, this is a bunch of routing. It's the same as what we've done before. So I've just got a little small clamp here to hold it, and I've got a pencil, and that will help me control it going through the router. So we're just going to set the fence so that it strikes at the measurements according to the plans, and we will run this through for a pass. Then we will flip it 90 degrees, run it through, flip it 90 degrees, run it through, and then we will flip it completely around the opposite way and do the exact same thing until we get all of this routing completed. And what you end up with is this. So this piece now is pretty much done. You can give it a bit of a sanding if you like, to soften some of the edges, as it is supposed to be like that cushioned air ride boot, I guess you'd call it. So you can soften the edges if you like to give it a little more realism, but other than that, this piece is done. I'm pretty sure you know what I'm going to say, and what I'm going to say is, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this week. We've made some more great progress. Another 7 hours on the model build, and it is coming along, but you need to have some patience. Guys, those routings, again, do them first. Do them when the piece is square, when you have edges to line it up with your template, when you can see what's going on. Could you use the pattern when you're cutting out the windows? Just glue down the pattern? Of course you can. But the way that I did it here, using that template to cut it out as a marking template, it allows you to see where the cuts are going to go before you do it, in case something goes a little funky and you end up cutting it, and then afterwards you say, oh wow, that doesn't line up at all. Everything is all off, and it's cut off some of my routing. So by cutting out the template and using it to mark your windows, it allows you to see what you're going to be cutting prior to actually taking the blade to your wood. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's content. It seems like it's going slowly, but these are some very time-consuming pieces to make. And we are getting further and further along with every episode. And just like always on this show, we are never in a hurry. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click that bell and then you won't miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. We have a ton of fun here every Tuesday and Friday, and I hope you're going to consider becoming a part of that audience. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed the content I've brought to you today. I hope you're trying this for yourself at home with your own set of plans and working along with these tutorial videos. And more importantly, guys, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.